Dahlia stood by the old wooden counter, gently stirring a pot of tea as morning sunlight slipped through the window, painting golden lines across the walls. The scent of lemongrass and ginger filled the room, warm and comforting, just like her. Outside, under the big mango tree, her husband Teo was chatting with his mother, Mama Era, who had come to visit for a few days. Their voices drifted in through the open window, light and casual. From the outside, everything looked perfect. A loving couple, a kind mother-in-law, a peaceful home in the heart of Nzinga village. But inside Dahlia, something felt off. Teo had been quiet lately, too quiet. His smiles came a little too quickly, and his eyes seemed to always be somewhere else. Still, Dahlia shook the thoughts away. Maybe she was just overthinking, as he often told her. She carefully poured the tea into 3 cups, humming softly to calm her racing heart. This was just another morning. Or so she thought. Sometimes, life doesn't scream when it's about to change. It whispers. And in that whisper, danger hides behind everyday things. Like a cup of tea. Just as Dahlia reached for the teacups, Teo stepped into the kitchen with a soft smile. "Let me make it today," he said, his voice gentle, almost playful. Dahlia blinked in surprise. "You? Making tea?" she asked, laughing a little. He rarely stepped into the kitchen, let alone offered to help. But he insisted. "You always do everything. Let me spoil you for once." Dahlia gave a small smile and nodded, thinking maybe, just maybe, he was trying to change. It felt sweet, unexpected. But somewhere deep in her chest, a strange feeling stirred. Something about his eyes didn't match his words. Teo moved through the kitchen with slow, careful steps. He opened drawers, lifted cups, boiled the water. His hands looked calm, steady. But behind that stillness was something else, something cold. When he thought no one was watching, he slipped his hand into his pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. Inside it was a strange white powder. Quick as a blink, he stirred it into one of the teacups. His breath caught in his throat, but he didn't stop. He finished preparing the tray and called out, "Tea's ready." Outside, the sun was still shining. Birds still sang. And no one, not Mama Era, not Dahlia, not even the wind, noticed what had just happened inside that kitchen. He walked out with the tray in his hands, balancing 3 cups, each filled with warmth. But one of them held something else, something dark, something deadly. Dahlia smiled at him as he handed her a cup. She thought maybe this was his way of making peace, of being a better husband. She couldn't have known that the kindness was fake, and the tea was a lie. Some betrayals wear a smile. Some monsters sit across from you and hold your hand. And some love stories die quietly, in the small moment between trust and a sip. Dahlia sat down with a tired but gentle smile, reaching for her cup of tea. The tray sat between them on the wooden table under the big mango tree. Teo sat across from her, acting calm, but his eyes followed her hand a little too closely. Just as her fingers touched the handle of the cup, the one he had laced with poison, Mama Era let out a soft chuckle and reached over. "Let me have yours, dear," she said playfully. "You always make the better cup." Dahlia laughed, thinking nothing of it. "It's all the same tea, Mama," she said. But Mama Era insisted, already switching the cups. It was a small casual moment, the kind of thing that happens in every home. But this one changed everything. Teo's face stiffened. For a second he forgot how to breathe. His eyes locked on the cup in his mother's hands. The same cup, the poisoned one. He opened his mouth slightly as if to stop her, but no words came. He just watched, frozen, as fate rewrote his plan in front of him. Mama Era lifted the cup and smiled warmly before taking a long, satisfied sip. Still the best tea in Nzinga," she said with a wink. Dahlia smiled back, proud. Everything still felt normal on the outside. Birds chirped in the trees. A soft wind passed through the leaves. But under the table, Teo's fingers gripped the edge of his chair. His heart was pounding loud enough to drown out the world. He hadn't meant for her to drink it. He hadn't planned this. But poison doesn't care about plans. It doesn't choose its victim. It just does what it's meant to do. As Mama Era kept sipping, chatting casually, Teo stared at her hands, her lips, her smile. He waited, afraid, hoping maybe the poison was weak, maybe it wouldn't work. But deep down he knew. The cup had changed hands, and with it so had destiny. And now, the secret he tried to hide was only moments away from screaming itself into the open. Mama Era took another long sip and smiled at her daughter-in-law. "You really have a gift, Dahlia," she said, her voice full of warmth. "This tea tastes like peace." She closed her eyes for a moment, enjoying it. Dahlia laughed softly, feeling proud. She loved making others feel cared for. Teo sat still, nodding along, forcing a smile. But his eyes didn't blink. His hands were tight in his lap, hidden under the table. Just a few seconds later, Mama Era's smile began to slip. Her lips stopped moving. Her eyebrows pulled together as if something didn't feel right. She looked down at the cup, confused, then back up at Dahlia. Her breathing changed. It became short and uneven, like she couldn't pull in enough air. Dahlia noticed it first. "Mama? Are you all right?" she asked, standing quickly. Mama Era tried to speak, but only a weak breath came out. Her hands began to tremble. The cup slipped from her grip and hit the ground, shattering into pieces. She leaned forward, clutching her chest. Her face turned pale. Her strong, steady body suddenly looked small and fragile. "Mama!" Dahlia shouted, rushing to her side. She dropped to her knees and held her, her voice shaking. "What's happening? Talk to me." But Mama Era couldn't speak. Her eyes were wide, full of fear. Something was terribly wrong. Teo didn't move. He just sat there, stiff like stone, watching the scene unfold. His face had lost all color. His lips were slightly parted, but no sound came out. Dahlia didn't even look at him. Her full attention was on Mama Era, who now lay trembling in her arms. Neighbors nearby heard the noise and began to gather, peering through the fence, whispering. Someone called for the village healer. But in that moment, all Dahlia could hear was the sound of Mama Era's shallow breaths and the thudding of her own heart. She didn't know what had happened. She didn't know why. But Teo knew. And no matter how still he sat, the truth was already rising, like poison through a body. Dahlia held Mama Era tightly, her hands shaking as she tried to keep her upright. "Stay with me, Mama. Please," she begged, her voice breaking. Mama Era's body felt heavier by the second, her breathing ragged and shallow. Her lips moved slowly, trying to form words. Dahlia leaned in closer, her face just inches away, desperate to hear anything. Then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, Mama Era spoke. He meant it for you," she whispered. Dahlia froze. Her heart stopped. Her arms trembled around the woman she loved like her own mother. What did you say?" she asked, but Mama Era's eyes were already closing, her energy slipping away. Dahlia sat there, stunned, unable to move. The words repeated in her mind like an echo she couldn't silence. "He meant it for you." She turned slowly toward Teo. He was still seated, but now his eyes were fixed on the ground. He didn't deny it. He didn't speak. His shoulders sank, and guilt hung over him like a heavy shadow. He couldn't even look at her. Tears ran down Dahlia's face. Not just from fear, not just from shock, but from heartbreak. She had loved this man, trusted him, shared her home, her dreams, her soul. And now, the man who once called her his world had tried to take her life with a cup of tea. The people around them started whispering, their faces confused and afraid. Some had heard Mama Era's final words. Others didn't need to. Teo's silence said it all. Dahlia looked at him, her eyes full of pain. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. But he still didn't answer. He just stared at the ground like a boy caught in the middle of a fire he started but couldn't stop. The truth was no longer hidden. It had been spoken through a dying breath, soft, broken, but powerful enough to change everything. And now no one would ever see Teo the same way again. The sound of the broken teacup and Dahlia's panicked cries spread fast through the village. Within minutes, neighbors rushed over, stepping through the gate, some barefoot, others still in their morning wrappers. Curious eyes turned worried as they saw Mama Era lying on the ground, her head resting in Dahlia's lap, her body barely moving. "She just collapsed," someone whispered. "Was it a stroke?" another asked. But then someone said, "I heard her. She said the tea was meant for Dahlia." Gasps moved through the small crowd like wine through dry leaves. 2 local healers arrived, bending over Mama Era with serious faces, checking her breath, feeling her pulse, smelling the tea that had spilled onto her clothes. But while they worked, the rest of the village slowly turned their eyes toward Teo. He stood now, but barely. His legs shook. His lips moved like he wanted to say something, but no words came. Dahlia looked at him with wide, hurt eyes, waiting. The neighbors waited too. Everyone waited for him to speak. Tayo, one of the elders said firmly. Is this true? Tayo swallowed hard. I didn't mean. His voice broke. He rubbed his hands together, looking everywhere except at Dahlia. No one asked what you meant, the elder replied. We're asking what you did. Silence followed. Tayo's shoulders fell. His hands dropped to his sides. His head lowered like it suddenly became too heavy. He didn't need to speak anymore. His silence was louder than any confession. People stepped back, their expressions changing from shock to disgust. Children were pulled close to their mothers. A few men clenched their fists. Dahlia sat still, holding Mama Era, but her eyes never left Tayo. The man she married. The man she thought she knew. His mask had slipped, and behind it was a stranger. In that moment, in the middle of their peaceful village, surrounded by people who once respected him, Tayo stood completely alone. Not because he was being pushed away but because That night, after the healers had taken Mama Era to rest and the neighbors had gone quiet, Dahlia sat alone in the house she once called home. Everything felt different now. The walls felt colder. The silence felt heavier. Tayo had been taken to the elders' hall, under guard, and the air around her buzzed with unanswered questions. But Dahlia needed more than just words. She needed the truth, all of it. With shaking hands, she went into their bedroom. It felt like walking into a memory that no longer belonged to her. She opened the chest of drawers slowly, digging through his things, old shirts, papers, random notes. Nothing unusual. Until her fingers touched something odd at the back of the bottom drawer. A small metal key taped to the underside of the wood. Her heart pounded. She looked around until she spotted the locked wooden box he always kept on the top shelf. He'd once told her it held old family papers. She had never touched it, out of respect, out of trust. But tonight trust was dead. She unlocked it. Inside were letters. Stacks of them. Some recent, some older. But one stood out, a freshly signed document. A wedding contract. The name on the top made her breath catch. Zero Malara. Dahlia read slowly, carefully, her hands trembling. The date of the ceremony was less than a month away. The ink was still fresh. Zara. Another woman. Another life. A new bride. Planned while Dahlia was still here, still cooking his meals, still pouring his tea. Tears blurred her vision, but she kept reading. There were notes about land transfers, property titles, her family land. It all made sense now. The poison. The lies. He hadn't just fallen out of love. He had planned to erase her. Replace her. Dahlia sat on the edge of the bed, the contract in her lap, her heart breaking in slow, silent pieces. This wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty. A cold, careful plan wrapped in a warm smile. And now she knew the truth. Tayo hadn't just tried to kill her body. He had tried to kill. Dahlia sat alone in the dark, the wedding contract still in her lap. The soft sound of crickets outside made the silence inside feel louder. She stared at the papers, her eyes dry now, too tired to cry anymore. One painful truth kept repeating in her mind, louder than any scream. Tayo never loved her. It hit her slowly like rain seeping through a crack in the roof. Everything she thought was love. Every smile, every hug, every promise was just a mask. He hadn't married her for her heart. He had married her for her land. Her father's land. Her inheritance. The house they lived in, the farm beside it, the fruit trees her father planted before he died. All of it legally belonged to her. And now she understood. Tayo didn't just want her out of the way. He wanted her completely erased. Quietly. Permanently. No fight. No noise. Just one sip of tea. She thought about the moments they shared. The nights she made his favorite stew. The times she waited up for him when he came home late. The dreams she shared about having children. All of it one-sided. He had already made plans to replace her with someone else. Another woman. Another life. As if she was nothing more than a stepping stone. And what hurt the most was not the plan itself, but the way he had looked at her just that morning. Like nothing was wrong. Like he could still pretend to love her while putting poison in her cup. Dahlia felt something shift inside her. Not just sadness but anger. Not just heartbreak but clarity. This wasn't about a broken marriage. This was about betrayal so deep, it cut through her very soul. She folded the contract gently, placed it on the table, and sat up straighter. He thought he could destroy her quietly. But he forgot one thing. Dahlia was her father's daughter, and the blood in her veins wasn't weak. He tried to take everything from her, but he would never take her spirit. Dahlia knew she had to find her. She needed to look Zara in the eyes, to hear it from the woman herself. It wasn't just about getting answers. It was about facing the full weight of the betrayal. With the wedding contract folded in her bag and questions burning in her chest, Dahlia traveled to the nearby village of Eid, where the address on the papers led her. She found Zara sitting under a tree, peeling oranges with quiet hands. She was young, maybe just a few years younger than Dahlia, and visibly pregnant. Her round belly rested gently under her wrapper. Her face looked peaceful, untouched by the storm that had already broken Dahlia's world. Dahlia introduced herself calmly, and when she mentioned Teyo's name, Zara smiled. "You know him?" she asked sweetly. "He's my fiancé. A good man. His wife she passed in her sleep last year. He's been through so much." Dahlia's breath caught. For a moment, she didn't know whether to scream or cry. Instead, she gently said, "I'm his wife. I'm not dead." Zara blinked, confused. "What?" she whispered. Her smile disappeared. "No, he told me. He told me you died peacefully in your bed." Dahlia pulled out the wedding contract and placed it in Zara's hands. "He planned a new life with you, while planning my death." Zara stared at the paper, her lips trembling. Her eyes filled with tears. "No, this can't be. He wouldn't." But the truth sat in her hands. Signed, sealed, dated. Zara's voice broke as she asked, "Was he really trying to kill you?" Dahlia nodded slowly. "His mother drank the tea meant for me. She barely survived." Zara looked down at her belly, then back at Dahlia. Her heart had been full of love, of hope, of dreams for a family. Now it was full of fear. In that moment, two women who had never met before, tied only by a man's lies, sat together and shared heartbreak. One had escaped death. The other was carrying the child of a stranger. And neither of them would ever be the same again. The sun was high above Nzinga when the village drum was struck, 3 loud beats that echoed across the hills. It was the sound that called the elders. One by one, they gathered under the great tree, the same tree where marriages were blessed and justice was spoken. The villagers came too, standing quietly around the circle, their faces tight with worry and anger. Something serious had happened and everyone knew it. Dahlia stood near the front, her hands holding the broken pieces of the poisoned cup, wrapped in cloth. Her eyes were steady, but her heart felt heavy. She wasn't just there to accuse a man. She was there to uncover the truth that nearly took her life. Mama Era was helped forward by 2 women. Her steps were slow, her body still weak, but her voice was clear. She stood before the elders and said, "I drank the tea, but it was never meant for me. My son Teyo, he meant it for Dahlia." A gasp moved through the crowd. Some shook their heads. Others placed their hands over their mouths. Even now it was hard for them to believe. Then Zara stepped forward. She clutched her belly with both hands, her face pale. "I didn't know," she said, her voice cracking. "He told me his wife had died. He planned to marry me next month." She held out the wedding contract, and one of the elders took it with a solemn nod. Finally they summoned Teyo. He was brought in, guarded by 2 village men. His clothes were wrinkled, his face hollow. He didn't look like the proud man who once walked through Nzinga with charm and confidence. He looked like someone whose lies had finally caught up with him. He was told to kneel. The broken cup was laid before him. The contract. The words of his mother. The tears of 2 women. He looked at all of it, and for the first time he didn't try to speak. There was nothing left to say. The great tree had seen love, sorrow, birth, and celebration. And today it would witness truth. Teyo knelt before the elders, eyes low, shoulders hunched, looking nothing like the man Dahlia once married. His lips moved as if he wanted to speak, maybe to explain, maybe to beg, but nothing came out. His silence spoke louder than any lie he could have told. The elders looked at him with heavy hearts. Some had watched him grow from a boy into a man. They had once trusted him, even praised him. But now that trust was broken beyond repair. One of the oldest elders, Baba Kuti, stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "You tried to kill your wife," he said. "You poisoned her tea. You lied to another woman. You disrespected your own mother. And you did all this for land." Teyo's eyes filled with tears. He dropped his head lower, hands shaking. "I was desperate," he whispered. I made a mistake. But the words didn't matter anymore. Mistakes are spilled water, another elder said. But this was not a mistake. This was a plan. Then came the final decision. One by one, the elders stood and turned their backs to Tayo. It was a symbol clear and ancient, a sign that someone had brought shame too deep to forgive. Baba Kuti spoke again. From this day on, you are no longer a son of Nzinga. Your name will not be spoken in honor. Your land will return to Dahlia. Your house will be burned. You will leave by sunset, and never return. The crowd stood silent, the air thick with emotion. Even the birds had stopped singing. Tayo collapsed fully to the ground, crying now, but no one moved to comfort him. Not his neighbors. Not his mother. Not Dahlia. Dahlia stood still, tears in her eyes. Not for him, but for the love she once gave to the wrong person. She didn't feel joy or victory. Only a deep, quiet ache. Tayo was led away, his footsteps slow, his future empty. He wasn't just exiled from the village. He was exiled from honor, from family, from everything that made him a man. Because in Nzinga, shame has no shelter. After the elders gave their judgment and Tayo was gone, the village slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The air felt lighter, safer. People nodded to Dahlia with quiet respect. Some even came to check on her, bringing fruits, soups, or just soft words. Justice had been served, everyone said so. But inside Dahlia, something still hurt deeply. She didn't cry for Tayo. She didn't miss his voice, his hands, or even the space he used to take up beside her. What she mourned was harder to explain. She mourned the version of herself who had once believed in love so easily. The girl who had smiled when Tayo first held her hand. The woman who waited for him every night, thinking he was working late for their future. She grieved for that woman because she would never be the same again. Some days it felt like her heart was a house that had caught fire. A place once filled with warmth, laughter, and dreams. Now left with smoke, ashes, and broken walls. She moved through that house carefully, trying to find pieces of herself still worth saving. At night, she would lie awake and ask herself quiet questions. Was it all a lie from the beginning? Did he ever love me at all? How could I not see it? But no answers came. Only silence. And yet, in the middle of all that grief, Dahlia also felt something else beginning to grow. Something small like a seed under the soil. It wasn't joy. Not yet. But maybe peace. A quiet kind of strength. She had faced death. She had been lied to, betrayed, nearly erased. But she was still here. Breathing. Standing. Healing. The love she gave him was real. Even if he never deserved it. And that meant something. Now, her grief wasn't just about losing a husband. It was about letting go of the old version of herself, the one who didn't yet know her own power. Dahlia left the house where everything had fallen apart. She didn't take much. Just a small bag of clothes, her mother's shawl, and the broken teacup wrapped in cloth. She walked slowly, step by step, away from the village center until the noise faded behind her. Her feet knew the way. They led her to a small hut by the river, the one her grandmother had once lived in. It had been empty for years, but the moment Dahlia stepped inside, it felt like coming home. The air by the river was different, softer, calmer. The water whispered gently as it moved over smooth stones, and the trees swayed like they were breathing with her. No voices, no judgment, no eyes watching her pain. Just nature and her. At first, the silence felt heavy. But each morning, as the sun rose and light touched the water, she started to feel lighter too. She woke up early, swept the floor, picked wild herbs, and listened to the birds. She didn't need to explain her sadness to anyone. The river understood. The trees didn't ask questions. They simply stood with her. Sometimes, she would sit on the riverbank and speak softly to the wind. Not with words of anger but with quiet thoughts. She talked to her grandmother. She talked to the girl she used to be. And slowly, her heart began to rest. She cooked small meals, lit candles at night, and watched fireflies blink in the dark. Life became simple. Soft. Safe. The wounds were still there, but they no longer bled. They were healing like cracked earth after the first rain. She didn't need anyone to complete her. Not anymore. In the quiet of that riverside hut, Dahlia found something Tayo could never give her: peace. Not the kind that comes from pretending everything is fine, but the kind that comes when you survive something meant to break you. And just like the river, she kept moving forward. Quietly. strongly, free. Months passed like gentle waves, and with each one Dahlia grew stronger. Her hair had grown longer, her smile softer. The hut by the river was no longer just a place to heal. It had become her home, her sanctuary. Word had spread through Nzinga and nearby villages about what she had been through. But instead of pity, women came to her with respect, curiosity, and quiet admiration. One bright afternoon, Dahlia decided to host a gathering. She sent out word through friends and neighbors. Come sit with me. Let's talk. Let's share. By midday, a group of women had arrived. Some older, some young, some carrying babies, others carrying pain in their eyes that only another woman could recognize. They sat on woven mats outside the hut, under the shade of tall trees. The river sang in the background, and the scent of ginger, honey, and lemongrass filled the air. Dahlia had prepared the tea herself, carefully, lovingly. Each cup held warmth, but it also held something more. A message. As she moved from one woman to the next, pouring tea, she smiled. Not with the mask she used to wear, but with a quiet honesty. When everyone had their cup, she stood in the center and spoke gently. Today, she said, we drink in truth. A hush fell over the circle. Every woman looked into her cup, then back at Dahlia. This tea is not just for warmth, she continued. It's for the truth we carry, the truth we live, and the truth we speak. No more pretending. No more silence. We are not weak because we've been hurt. We are strong because we're still here. And slowly the women lifted their cups. Not with fear. Not with suspicion. But with trust. They drank. Some cried. Some smiled. Some simply closed their eyes and breathed. In that moment the tea wasn't just a drink, it was a symbol. A closing of an old chapter, and the beginning of a new one. The same hands that once almost delivered poison now offered healing. And this time every drop was filled with love. Years passed, and the little yellow house by the river became something more than just a home. It became a place people spoke of with quiet wonder. The paint faded in the sun, wildflowers grew along the path, and smoke gently curled from the chimney each morning. But what truly made it special wasn't what stood on the outside. It was who lived within. Children walking by would whisper to one another, "That's where Dahlia lives." Some would run ahead and peek through the trees, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, sometimes sweeping the porch, sometimes tending her herbs, always with a calm presence that felt almost magical. She had become more than just a woman. She was a living story. She didn't drink the poison, they'd say, eyes wide. But she drank pain and still rose. Older women nodded in agreement. They remembered the fire she walked through, the shame she turned into strength, the silence she turned into truth. Young girls looked up to her not because she was perfect but because she was real, brave, honest, whole. Dahlia's name became something that mothers spoke when they taught their daughters how to be strong. Not loud strength but quiet-rooted strength, the kind that grows even after storms. And though Dahlia never asked for fame or praise, her story lived in every corner of Nzinga. Not because of what was done to her, but because of how she survived it. And in the house by the river, her legacy flowed, like the water beside it, ever steady, ever true.